Have you ever felt that crushing weight in your chest? That moment when you realize you've completely lost yourself trying to please someone else. When you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you. Your heart knows that truth. The silent tears you've shed while driving alone in your car. The times you've swallowed your words, pushed down your feelings, made yourself smaller, all because you thought that's what love required. You thought that's what you had to do to be worthy of someone else's affection. But I'm here to tell you something that will shake you to your core. Every time you dim your light for someone else, you're not just hurting yourself, you're committing an act of spiritual violence against your very soul. Think about it. Would you ever look at a magnificent rose and tell it to be less beautiful? Would you scold the ocean for its depths? Would you demand the stars shine less brightly? Then why do you do this to yourself? You see, we're living in a world that has taught us that love is about sacrifice. That to be loved, we must first make ourselves acceptable to others. That we must sand down our rough edges, quiet our laughter, tame our dreams, and fit ourselves into the shapes that others have carved out for us. And oh, how good we become at this dance of self-denial. We've mastered the art of apology, apologizing for our success, our failures, our dreams, our fears, our very existence. We've learned to navigate relationships like tightrope walkers, carefully balancing everyone else's needs while our own hearts scream in silence. You know what I'm talking about? It's that relationship where you constantly check your phone, wondering if you've said something wrong. It's that friendship where you're always walking on eggshells, trying to avoid triggering another person's insecurities. It's that family dynamic where you play small because your light makes others uncomfortable. But here's the truth that's going to set your soul on fire. You were not born to be somebody else's comfort zone. You were not created to be a supporting character in another person's story. You are not here to make yourself smaller so that others can feel. When you came into this world, you arrived as a complete miracle, perfect in your imperfection, complete in your incompleteness. You were born with a unique fingerprint, a voice that has never existed before and will never exist again. You came here with gifts that this world desperately needs. Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you stood in front of the mirror and truly loved what you saw? Not just your physical appearance, but the entirety of who you are. When was the last time you looked into your own eyes and felt proud of the person looking back at you? If you're struggling to answer that question, we bought into the lie that real love means complete self-sacrifice. We began to wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, our suffering like a crown of thorns. Let me tell you something that might shake your world. The most selfish thing you can do is to abandon yourself in the name of loving others. Because when you do that, you're not just hurting yourself, you're teaching everyone around you that love requires self-destruction. Think about the message you're sending to your children when you consistently put everyone else's needs before your own. Think about what you're teaching your friends when you allow them to cross your boundaries time and time again. Think about what you're showing the world about what you believe you deserve. You're teaching them that love is about erasure, that relationships require submission, that connection demands sacrifice. And those are lessons that will echo through generations if we don't have the courage to change them now. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this might be hard to hear. Every time you've let go of your self-love for someone else, it wasn't really about them. It was about you. It was about what you believed you deserved. It was about the stories you were telling yourself about your worth. When you trace it back, really trace it back, you'll find that every time you abandoned yourself, it wasn't because someone demanded it of you. It was because somewhere deep inside you believed that's what you had to do to be loved. But that belief is a lie. It's a lie that's been passed down through generations. It's a lie that's been reinforced by society. It's a lie that's been woven into the fabric of our culture. And it's time right now in this moment to rip that lie out by its roots. But here's the beautiful truth. The more fully you love yourself, the more capacity you have to love others. The more deeply you honor your own heart, the more authentically you can connect with others, the more fiercely you protect your own spirit, the more genuine your relationships become. Real love, the kind that transforms lives and heals hearts, doesn't demand that you become less so that someone else can become more. Real love expands. It creates space for everyone to grow. It celebrates uniqueness. It honors boundaries. It respects individuality. And it all begins with you. It begins with the way you talk to yourself when you're alone. It begins with the choices you make when no one is watching. It begins with the boundaries you set and maintain, even when it's uncomfortable. The most profound act of love you can offer this world is to love yourself completely, unapologetically, and without condition. Because when you do that, you give everyone around you permission to do the same. You become a living, breathing example of what's possible. You become a lighthouse for others who are still finding their way through the darkness of self-doubt and people-pleasing. You become proof that there's another way to live, to love, and to relate to others. So I ask, what parts of yourself have you been hiding? What dreams have you been putting on hold? What boundaries have you been afraid to set? What truth have you been afraid to speak? The time has come to reclaim every piece of yourself that you've given away. The time has come to call back your power from all the places you've left it. The time has come to fall madly, deeply, irrevocably in love with yourself. Because when you do, something magical happens. The world doesn't end. People don't leave. Or if they do, you realize it's because they were meant to. Relationships don't crumble. They either strengthen or transform into what they were always meant. And most importantly, you finally understand that you were never meant to earn love. You were never meant to prove your worth. You were never meant to make yourself smaller. You were meant to shine. You were meant to expand. You were meant to take up space in this world. And that's exactly what we're going to explore together as we continue this journey. Because this isn't just a talk. This is a revolution of the heart. This is your permission slip to love yourself with the same fierce devotion that you've been giving to everyone else. Are you ready to begin? Right now, in this moment, I want you to feel the weight of a profound truth. Every relationship you'll ever have is a mirror of the relationship you have with yourself. Every single one. That person who keeps treating you like you're not enough, they're not the problem. That partner who doesn't respect your boundaries, they're not the source. That friend who takes you for granted, they're just playing the role you've unconsciously assigned them. Because here's the earth-shattering reality. People treat us exactly how we secretly believe we deserve to be treated. They don't set the price tag on our worth. We do. And most of us have been marking ourselves down for so long that we've forgotten our true value. Remember that time you stayed in that toxic relationship, making excuses for someone's behavior? Remember how you told yourself, maybe if I just try harder, love more, give more, be more, they'll finally see my worth? But let me ask you something that might stop you in your tracks. Why were you auditioning for a role in your need to be different to be worthy of love? And your soul has been listening. Your spirit has been taking notes. Your heart has been collecting evidence for the case against your own worth. But here's what nobody tells you about letting go of your self-love for others. It's not just a betrayal of yourself, it's a betrayal of the divine force that created you. It's like telling the universe, you made a mistake when you made me this way. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. Every time you dim your light for someone else, you're essentially arguing with the wisdom of creation itself. You're saying this vessel I was given, this heart, this mind, this spirit, it needs to be something else to be worthy of love. But what if, and this is where everything changes, what if you've been looking at it all wrong? What if the people who can't handle your light aren't meant to be shade for you to hide under, but rather signs pointing you back to your own truth? What if every person who has ever made you feel like you needed to be different was actually giving you an opportunity? An opportunity to choose yourself, an opportunity to stand in your truth, an opportunity to love yourself more fiercely than ever before. Because there's another truth that might shake you. People who try to dim your light are usually fighting their own darkness. People who try to make you smaller are usually afraid of their own greatness. People who try to control you are usually terrified of their own lack of control. But their battles are not yours to fight. Their fears are not yours to manage. Their insecurities are not yours to heal. Your only responsibility, your sacred duty is to be unapologetically yourself. To love yourself so completely that your self-love becomes a shelter for your spirit, a fortress that protects your peace, a lighthouse that guides you home when relationships try to pull you out to sea. Think about water for a moment. When water meets an obstacle, it doesn't stop being water. It doesn't try to become rock or air or fire. It simply finds another way to flow. It maintains its essential nature while adapting. That's what real self-love looks like. It's not rigid or defensive. It's not about building walls or pushing people away. It's about maintaining your essential nature, your truth, your values, your boundaries, while remaining open to authentic connection. And we think self-love is something we do in isolation. We think it's about bubble baths and face masks and positive affirmations. And while those things can be expressions of self-love, they're not its essence. True self-love is how you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. It's how you handle rejection. It's what you do when someone questions your dreams. It's how you respond when someone tries to make you feel small. It's the voice in your head that says, I may not be perfect, but I am worthy. I may make mistakes, but I am learning. I may lose people along the way, but I will never again lose myself. And yes, choosing yourself means some people might leave your life. Some relationships might end. Some connections might dissolve. But here's what I need you to understand. When you stop abandoning yourself, you make room for people who would never ask you to. When you stop compromising your truth, you attract people who celebrate it. When you stop dimming your light, you draw in people who want to help it shine brighter. Because authentic relationships are the kind that nurture your soul rather than drain it, can only be built on a foundation of self-love. What would change in your relationships if you loved yourself too much to accept crumbs of affection? What would shift in your world if you decided that your self-love was non-negotiable? Imagine waking up every morning knowing that no matter what happens that day, you've got your own back. Imagine moving through the world without constantly seeking external validation. Imagine loving so completely, so unconditionally that you become unshakable in your world. That's not just a dream. That's not just a nice idea. That's your birthright. That's the life you were meant to live. That's the love you were meant to experience, first and foremost with yourself. Because when you love yourself this way, you stop being a hostage to other people's opinions. You stop being a prisoner of their expectations. You stop being a victim of their limitations. Instead, you become free. Free to be yourself, free to grow, free to change, free to make mistakes, free to succeed, free to live life on your own terms. And that freedom, that unshakable, unconditional self-love becomes your superpower. It becomes the force that transforms not just your life, because when you love yourself this way, you give others permission to do the same. When you honor your truth this way, you create space for others to find theirs. When you protect your peace this way, you show others that they can do it too. This is the revolution we've been waiting for. This is the change we've been seeking. This is the love we've been longing for. And it begins with you, right here, right now, in this moment. Are you ready to take the next step on this journey? Are you ready to discover what happens when you commit to never letting go of your self-love for anyone ever again? Because what comes next will transform everything. Let's talk about something that might make you uncomfortable. The price you've been paying for not loving yourself enough, not in dollars and cents, but in moments, in memories, in opportunities, in joy. You see, every time you choose someone else's comfort over your own truth, you're not just losing a moment. You're losing a piece of your soul's music. Every time you silence your inner voice to keep the peace, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're creating internal war. Think about the last time you said yes, when every fiber of your being was screaming no. Remember that feeling in your stomach? That tightness in your chest? That's not anxiety. That's your spirit sending you a desperate message. That's your soul trying to protect you from betraying yourself again. But we've become so good at ignoring these signals. We've mastered the art of overriding our internal guidance system. We've learned to trust everyone else's navigation more than our own. And why? Because somewhere along the way, we started believing that peace at any price was better than standing in our truth. We convinced ourselves that keeping others comfortable was more important than keeping ourselves whole. Let me share something profound with you. Every time you abandon yourself to keep someone else happy, you're not actually making them happy. You're just teaching them that your boundaries don't matter. You're showing them that your truth is negotiable. You're demonstrating that your love for them is more important than your love for yourself. And here's the cruel irony. They end up respecting you less, not more. Because people can't respect someone who doesn't respect themselves. They can't value someone who consistently demonstrates that they're not valuable. Think about it like this. Would you trust a guide who constantly doubted their own direction? Would you follow a leader who repeatedly abandoned their own principles? Would you believe someone who regularly contradicted their own truth? That's exactly what you're doing when you let go of your self-love for someone else. You're becoming an unreliable narrator in your own life story. You're teaching everyone around you that your words don't match your actions, that your boundaries are just suggestions, but here's where it gets really interesting. The moment you start loving yourself fiercely, unapologetically, completely, something magical happens. The people who truly belong in your life don't run away. They step closer. They're drawn to your authenticity like moths to a flame. Because real love, the kind that nurtures rather than depletes, isn't afraid of your strengths. It's not threatened by your growth. It doesn't require you to be less so that it can be more. Real love is expansive. It creates space for both people to be fully themselves. It celebrates independence as much as connection. It honors boundaries as much as intimacy. But you can't attract this kind of love if you're not practicing it with yourself first. You can't recognize it if you're still settling for its cheap imitations. You can't maintain it if you're still willing to trade your truth for temporary peace. What would change in your life if you made a non-negotiable commitment to your own heart? What would shift in your relationships if you refused to abandon yourself ever again? Imagine walking into a room without wondering if you're too much or not enough. Imagine speaking your truth without first filtering it through other people's expectations. Imagine loving without fear of losing yourself in the process. This isn't just a fantasy. This is what becomes possible when you make your self-love non-negotiable. This is what opens up when you stop treating yourself like a back condition. The hardest part isn't standing up to others. It's standing up to others. It's standing up to yourself. It's challenging your own limiting beliefs. It's questioning your own destructive patterns. It's confronting your own self-betrayal. You didn't learn to abandon yourself overnight. This pattern was built one small decision at a time, one compromise at a time, one moment of self-betrayal at a time. Maybe it started in childhood, when you learned that being good meant being quiet, compliant, agreeable. Maybe it began in your first relationship when you mistook control for care, jealousy for love. Maybe it grew in your career, where you learned that success meant shrinking yourself to fit. But here's the beautiful truth. Just as this pattern was built one decision at a time, it can be dismantled the same way. One choice at a time, one boundary at a time, one act of self-love at a time. Start with the small moments. The next time someone asks you what you want, tell the truth instead of saying, I don't mind, or whatever you want. The next time you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, listen to it instead of pushing it down. The next time you're tempted to abandon your truth to keep the peace, pause and ask yourself, what would love do? Because real self-love isn't just a feeling. It's a practice. It's a series of choices you make every day and every moment with every person you encounter. It's choosing to speak kindly to yourself when you make a mistake. It's choosing to honor your boundaries even when others push against them. It's choosing to trust your intuition even when others question it. And yes, this practice will make some people uncomfortable. Yes, some relationships will change. Yes, some people might leave. The people who leave your life because you start loving yourself were never meant to be part of your story's next chapter. They were there to teach you what you don't want, to show you what you won't accept anymore, to help you understand what real love isn't. And as they leave, they make space for something miraculous. People who love you because of your strengths, not despite it. People who celebrate your growth instead of fearing it. People who respect your boundaries because they have healthy ones of their own. These are your people. This is your tribe. This is the love you've been looking for. But they can't find you if you're still hiding. They can't connect with you if you're still shrinking. They can't love you completely if you're still willing to accept less than you deserve. So I ask you again, Are you ready to make your self-love non-negotiable? Are you prepared to stop abandoning yourself for the comfort of others? Are you willing to be who you really are, even if it means walking alone for a while? Because what comes next will astound you. You know that quiet voice inside you? The one that whispers your deepest truths in the middle of the night? The one that knows exactly who you are and what you deserve? It's time to turn up its volume. It's time to let it roar. Because that voice, that knowing, is your internal compass. It's your spiritual GPS. It's the part of you that has never forgotten your worth, even when you have. But for so long, we've been taught to doubt this voice. We've learned to second guess. They weren't your punishment. They were your wake-up call. Every person who made you feel like you needed to be different was actually showing you exactly who you needed to become. Someone who loves themselves too much to accept conditional love from anyone else. Think about water again for a moment. When water is contained in a small cup, it takes that shape. In a river, it flows freely. In the ocean, it becomes vast and powerful. But no matter what form it takes, water never forgets its essential nature. It never apologizes for being wet. It never tries to be anything other than what it is. That's the kind of self-love I'm talking about. The kind that remembers its own nature regardless of the container others try to put it in, the kind that flows around obstacles rather than becoming them, the kind that knows its own power, even in the smallest amounts. When you start loving yourself this way, completely, unapologetically, unconditionally, you develop what I call a love compass. This internal guidance system helps you navigate relationships with unwavering clarity. Suddenly, you can tell the difference between love and manipulation. You can distinguish between care and control. You can separate genuine connection from emotional dependency. Why? Because you're no longer looking at relationships through the lens of what can I do to make them love me. Instead, you're looking through the lens of does this honor the love I have for myself? This shift changes everything. It transforms your relationships from exercises in earning love into experiences of sharing love. It turns your connections from transactions into true bonds. It evolves your partnerships from power struggles into power. But let me be clear about something. This kind of self-love isn't always gentle. Though sometimes it's fierce, sometimes it's revolutionary, sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's the kind of love that makes you say no when every people-pleasing bone in your body is screaming. Yes, it's the kind of love that makes you walk away from situations that don't serve your highest good, even when walking away feels like tearing yourself in. It's the kind of love that makes you choose yourself, even when that choice feels lonely, even when that choice isn't popular, even when that choice means disappointing people you care about. Because here's another truth that might shake you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is to love yourself more than they want you to. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give to those around you is the example of someone who refuses to settle for less than they deserve. Think about it. It's time you honor your boundaries. You teach others how to honor theirs. Every time you speak your truth, you give others permission to speak theirs. Every time you choose yourself, you show others that they can choose themselves too. This is how we heal generations of self-abandonment. This is how we break chains of unworthiness that have been passed down through families. This is how we change the world. By changing our relationship with ourselves first. But this journey requires courage. It requires you to be willing to feel uncomfortable. It requires you to trust yourself more than you trust the opinions of others. It requires you to believe that you are worthy of love, not because of what you do or don't do, but simply because you exist. And yes, this journey will test you. There will be moments when going back to your old patterns feels easier than moving forward. There will be times when dimming your light seems simpler than learning to shine brighter. There will be days when loving yourself feels like the hardest thing you've ever done. But here's what you need to remember in those moments. Every time you choose yourself, you're not just making a choice for right now. You're making a choice for every future version of yourself. You're setting a precedent. You're creating a new normal. You're establishing a new baseline for what you will and won't accept in your life. And something magical happens when you maintain this commitment to yourself. The universe starts conspiring in your favor. Opportunities that align with your worth start appearing. People who match your level of self-love start showing up. Situations that honor your boundaries start manifesting. Not because you become someone different, but because you finally become who you truly are. Not because you've earned it, but because you finally stop blocking it with self-doubt and unworthiness. This is what becomes possible when you make an unshakable commitment to never let go of your self-love for anyone. You become a force of nature. You become a walking example of what's possible. You become living proof that love doesn't require sacrifice, it requires self-honor. This isn't about becoming perfect. This isn't about never making mistakes. This isn't about always getting it right. This is about loving yourself through the mistakes. This is about honoring yourself even when you get it wrong. This is about maintaining your commitment to self-love, especially when it's hardest. Because that's when it matters most. That's when it transforms you. That's when it heals you. Or you develop what I call emotional immunity. Just like your physical immune system protects your body from harmful invaders, your emotional immunity protects your spirit from toxic relationships, degrading situations, and self-destructive patterns. Suddenly you can feel in your bones when something isn't right for you. You can sense in your soul when someone's words don't match their actions. You can tell in your heart when a situation is asking you to be less than who you are. And instead of overriding these signals like you used to, you honor them. Instead of doubting your intuition, you trust it. Instead of questioning your worth, you protect it. Think about how revolutionary this is. You no longer need anyone else to validate your feelings because you become your own validator. You no longer require external permission to honor your boundaries because you've become your own authority. You no longer seek approval from others because you've become your own biggest supporter. This is what true freedom feels like. This is what real power looks like. This is what authentic love creates. This kind of self-love isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's not about never getting hurt. It's not about building walls so high that no one can reach you. Instead, it's about becoming so secure in your worth that you can remain open, even when it's risky. It's about being so grounded in your truth that you can stay soft even when the world is hard. It's about loving yourself so completely that you can keep your heart open even after it's been broken. Because real strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you pick yourself up when you do. Real power isn't about never feeling pain. It's about how you handle it when you do. Real self-love isn't about never making mistakes. It's about how you treat yourself when you do. When you love yourself this way, you stop seeking validation in other people's opinions. You stop looking for completion in romantic relationships. You stop trying to earn worth through achievements. Instead, you become whole on your own. Not because you don't need anyone else, but because you finally understand that relationships are meant to enhance your life, not complete it. They're meant to add to your joy, not create it. They're meant to complement your worth, not define it. This understanding transforms how you approach every relationship in your life. You stop accepting crumbs of affection because you're no longer starving for love. You stop tolerating disrespect because you're no longer desperate for connection. You stop compromising your values because you're no longer willing to abandon yourself for anyone. And there's the beautiful paradox. When you love yourself this completely, you actually become more capable of loving others authentically. When you honor your own boundaries, you become more respectful of others' boundaries. When you're true to yourself, you inspire others to be true to themselves. Your self-love becomes a gift not just to you, but to everyone around you. It becomes a light that shows others what's possible. It becomes a permission slip for others to love themselves too. Every time you choose yourself, you're not just changing your own life, you're changing the lives of everyone who you were always meant to be. Not because you've earned it, but because you finally stopped blocking what was always yours to claim. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you finally embraced who you've always been. This is your moment. This is your invitation. This is your revolution. It starts with you. It starts now. It starts with the simple but profound decision to love yourself more than anyone else ever could, to honor yourself more than anyone else ever would, to choose yourself more than anyone else ever will. And as you step into this new way of being, remember this, you are not just worthy of love. You are love itself. You're not just deserving of respect. You're respect embodied. You are not just seeking wholeness. You are wholeness expressing itself through human form. Every time you've let go of your self-love for someone else, you weren't just losing a piece of yourself, you were temporarily forgetting who you truly are. But that ends now. That ends here. That ends with this commitment to yourself. Because when you love yourself completely, unconditionally, and unapologetically, you don't just change your life. You change the world. You become living proof that it's possible to love ourselves exactly as we are. You become evidence that we don't have to dim our light to deserve love. You become testimony to the transformative power of self-love. This is your legacy. This is your gift to the world. This is your truth. Own it. Live it. Never let it go. The world is waiting for the magic that only you can bring when you love yourself completely. The universe is ready for the light that only you can shine when you honor your truth fully. Life is prepared for the love that only you can share when you embrace your worth totally. Are you ready? Because this is just the beginning of the most important love story of your life. The one between you and yourself. And I promise you, it's going to be beautiful.